Topic for today's lecture is control and decision making statements in C language. Like any other language, C language also has a very rich collection of statements, commands which control the flow of program. So we'll see these statements, how the programmers actually control the flow in their C programming. So if we see the definition of the control statements in C, control statements in C help us to control the flow of program execution. They are used to direct the execution of statements under certain conditions. If we see a real life example, if you go to a bookshop and ask for a blue pen or black pen. Now if the shopkeeper has the blue pen, he or she will give it to you, or else she will look for a black pen and it will be provided to you. So this is a real-time example of how if conditions are actually implemented in our real life. So now we'll see them in detail. How do we actually implement other control statements and decision making statements in C programming language? There are actually four types of control statements in C: decision making control statements, conditional statements, go-to statements, and loop control statements. Again, I will repeat them: decision making control statements, conditional statements, go-to statements, and loop control statements. These are the four types of control statements in C programming language. We'll start with decision making statements. There are actually four types of decision making statements in C: simple if statements, if else statements, nested if else statements, and else if later. Now actually all of these are self-explanatory. Their names actually tell us the function which they are carrying out. For example, simple if statement has only one if statement. If this condition is true, then follow this path. If else statement has two paths. If this condition is true, follow this path. Otherwise, follow this path. In simple if statement, there is only one path, and in if else statement, there are two paths. If this statement is true, then follow this path. Otherwise, follow this path. Nested if else statement has many paths. So if this condition is true, then follow this path, and if this condition is not true, then follow this path. Say if this condition is true, then follow path 1, and if this condition is not true, then follow path 2. Within path 1, we can have path 1a, path 1b, path 1c, like this. Similarly, in path 2, we can have path 2a, path 2b. So you can increase the number of levels in nested if else statements. In a ladder also, you can have path 1, path 2, path 1a, 1b, then again 1b1, 1b2. You can have as many ifs and else as you like, depending upon the situation which you want to program in C programming language. Now we'll keep it very simple, and I will provide you examples and sample code also for these statements, so that it is easier for you to understand the logic behind these statements. So we'll start with simple if statement. The definition of this is the statement under if block are executed when condition is satisfied. Else statements under if block are not executed. So that means there is only one path. So if this condition is true, then follow this path. If this condition is not true, nothing is defined. So that means the programmer only wants to take this decision that if this condition is true, then you should follow this path. We'll see this in a sample code and also when it runs on a computer. So if we see the sample code for simple if statement, it will be something like this. Like any other C program, this has these two include statements. I will only explain the structure of this C program once for this example, and remaining I will only consider for the code which is inside, over here. So for the first one, I will explain the entire structure of the C programming language. We have two include statements. First, we are including the stdio header file, that means standard input output header file. We are also including standard library header file also, so that these functions which we are using, like for example printf, scanf, these function return, these functions which we are using, we don't have to program these functions. We already have them in standard IO header file and standard library header file. So the every C program has a main portion or a main module or a main function that controls the entire C program. So this one also has this main function, and we are declaring these two variables, integer a and integer b. This is known as declaration of variables. So we are declaring two variables and we are naming them a and b, and we are categorizing them as integer variables. So we are declaring these two variables. Then we are printing this statement on the display which says enter the value of a, and this scanf function is used to take input from the user. So this %d is format specifier. This is known as the format specifier. It specifies the format of input, and format of input is what? This is, we are taking this a input, and a is we have already declared a as an integer. So we can only take a as an integer over here using this scanf statement. And then we are taking in the similar way, we are taking from the user the value of b also, b variable also. So user will enter the values of a and b, and we have only one path which will consider. We have only this one if statement which will see if the value of a entered is greater than b or not. This is the only one path. So if the value of a is greater than b, it will print on this display value a is greater than value b. That's all. There is no else. There is no else if. There are no multiple paths. There is only one path which says if a is greater than b, then print this. This program does not specify what if the value of a is equal to b, or what if the value of a is greater than b. This simple program only takes care of this condition when a is greater than b. Now we'll see the result of this code when it runs on the computer, what results it actually brings. So as we saw in the sample code, two values are entered. Value of a is entered as 90, value of b is entered at 60, and the response from the computer is value of a is greater than value b. This is what we have programmed, and this is what is the result. If we provide the value of a as 60 and value of b as 90, nothing will happen. No response from the computer will be there, because it has only one if condition, and that if condition is taking care of if the value of a is greater than b or not. So in the coming if statements, we will see how we can program nested if and else if later also. So the next decision making statements in C is if else statement. The statement under if block is executed when condition is satisfied, otherwise else block is executed. So there are two blocks. If condition is satisfied, then this block over here is executed, and if the condition is not satisfied, then this block over here is satisfied, will be implemented or executed. So if we see through the flow chart, this is the condition. This is where we are taking this decision, and this diamond is the decision symbol in a flow chart. So if the condition is true, this statement will be executed. If the condition is false, then this condition will be executed. Now there are no multiple paths, there are only two paths. There are no so many paths because it is only if and else statement. We'll see when we will have many else if and many more paths implemented inside this if statement, but in this particular case we are only considering the value, and then we are considering it, and we are then comparing it with each other, and we will see what action should the computer take if the value of A is greater than B or if the condition is otherwise. And after that these two statements, other statements will be executed. Now we will see the sample code and we will see the result also. So the sample code for if else statement is something like this, and as I explained before, over here I will not explain these two include statements. I will start with the main program. Over here we are also declaring two integer variables, and we are taking the input from user. This printf statement prints this statement, this string on the display, and this scanf takes the input from user. Another printf and scanf combination takes another value from user, that is value b, and then it compares. If a is greater than b, then it will print on the screen value of a is greater than b. Otherwise it will print value of a is less than b. Finish. So this program, like the previous program, takes two inputs, compares them, and if value of a is greater than b, then it will display one message, so that is path 1, and if the value of a is less than b, then it prints another message, and that is path 2. So we'll see how it is actually implemented and what are the results which we see when we run this program. If we run this program and we provide the value of a as 1, 2, 3, value of b is 100, then we will see the message value of a is greater than b. If on the other hand, if we provide the value of a as 100 and value of b as 1, 2, 3, 123, then we will receive a message value of a is less than b. So this is path 1 from the if statement, and this is the else part, which says that if value of a is less than b, then print this statement. So this is what is being displayed. So these are two different occasions when this program is run, and the values entered are different. In case 1, we have entered value of a as 123 and value of b as 100, and we are getting this message value of a is greater than b. Likewise, in other example, we have entered the value of a as 100 and value of b as 123, and we are getting this message value of a is less than value of b. So this is how you implement if else statement in C programming language. So now we will move to the next statement, next decision making statements in C, and that is nested if. Nested, as the name implies, you have nest of ifs and else. So you have multiple paths. As I explained a little while ago, you can have one path using if, you can have two paths, and you can have multiple paths. So over here in nested if, we have multiple paths available. So we'll start with one condition. We'll see in the example code, and we'll see in the results also. It will be very much clear from the example code, from sample code, and also from the results. But over here, if we try to explain it through a flow chart, then it looks something like this. We start with a decision. If the condition is true, then follow this path. If the condition is not true, then follow this path. So these are the two main paths, path 1 and path 2 we can say. In path 1 we have implemented another condition, another if statement which says that if within path 1 if we have this condition true, then you follow this statement, and if we have this condition true, then you follow this statement. So this is, as I told you before, this is path 1 and this is path 1a, this is path 1b, this is path 2, this is path 1, path 2a, and this is path 2b. These are the arbitrary names. I'm just giving them arbitrary names, just simple names, example names, so that it is clear to you how do we actually name the paths when we do the actual programming. So this is how we program the nested if, uh, just from the flow chart point of view. Now we'll see the sample code also, and we will see the results of these statements also. This is how actually this is nested if syntax. This is in the previous slide we saw the flow chart, and over here we are explaining it. I am trying to explain this in the form of a pseudocode. So this is how the pseudocode looks like. Pseudocode means a code which is basically a high level code, a code that is in form of statements. But this code may not run because it only says statement 1 and statement 2. They are not actual C statements and C commands, but it is used to explain the flow of program. So if the condition 1 is true, follow this path. If the condition is true, if the condition 1 is not true, then follow this path. So these are the two paths basically. In the previous example, I showed them in the form of a flowchart. In this example, I am just showing them in the form of pseudocode. So now we'll see the sample code for nested if statements. So again, I will start with the main block, the main block of the C program. Over here, there is only one value that we are taking from user, and we are declaring it as an integer variable. Now you can see there are two paths. If a is not greater than 10, then follow this path. Otherwise, you say you entered 10. That means if the value that you entered is not 10, fix 10, then you follow this path, this one from here to over here. And if it is exactly 10, then you follow this path. Within this, if a is not equal to 10, within this we have another two paths. If a is greater than 15, then you say the value that you entered is greater than 15, and if it is less than 20, then you say the value that you entered is less than 20. Say it is 16 or 17 or 18. So the concept which I want to explain in this code is that we have implemented two blocks, two main paths over here. Number one path is that if a, that means input that the user is providing, is equal to 10, then you say you entered 10. If it is not 10, then you follow this path, and you say it is not equal to 10. That means the value you entered is not equal to 10. Now within the not equal to 10, you have two more if. One if says if a is greater than 15, then print this message, and if a is less than 20, then print this message. These values are not fixed values. These are only taken to explain to you how you actually make blocks within a C program. It is essential for any programming language, including C, that you should be able to make blocks. You should be able to make paths of your program based on the conditions, based on the inputs that the user is providing, or based on the inputs that are coming to computer through other sensors, through other input devices. So this is how actually you make decisions in C programming language using nested if statements. Now you see there are two paths. I explained to you there are two paths. One was there to see if the value entered is equal to 10 or not. So if the value entered is equal to 10, like for example in the first running I provided the value of a as 10, so the computer said you entered 10. Very simple. And then in the next run, when the computer asked me to enter the value of a, I entered 16. Now it has provided me three outputs. 16 that has been provided by me is not equal to 10. Yes, it is not equal to 10. 16 is greater than 15. Good, correct. And 16 is less than 20. Again, these decisions are coming from the computer. Now, at this stage, you may think it is very simple. You are only comparing two numbers. Yes, it is very simple. I am only comparing two numbers. This is not very complex program. I am not calculating the path of a rocket from here to moon. Uh, Although you can do this using C language. I remember the first program for the Badr 1 satellite which Pakistan sent into the orbit. The code for that was written in C language. So C is a very powerful language. You can program anything. You can make any device work. You can take inputs from any device, make decisions, control systems, control equipment, and make very complex calculations. But in this particular example, I am only trying to explain to you how you make decisions in a C programming language program using nested if statements. So yes, it is very simple, but these are the building blocks of C programming language. Now we will move to the conditional statements in C. Conditional statements in C, we will only consider one statement, that is switch statement. As per the value of switch expression, the switch statement will allow multi-way branching. That means branching in multiple paths. The only difference between the if statement and the switch statement is that in if statement user can provide any value. I mean, you cannot force user to provide you a particular input. User can provide any input, and based on that input you can have one path, simple if, you can have two paths, if else, or you can have nested if also. So that means multiple paths, but you cannot force user to provide a particular type of input. In switch statement, you tell user that you have only these five options. You can provide me any input from these five options. Now, when in a programming situation you can actually have this type of situation. Yes, many times you want user, for example, you have only programmed to make the picture of a shirt in 5 different colors. So you can ask user to provide a color, like for example green, blue, black, white and orange. So you have only programmed to make the shirts from these 4 or 5 colors. Now if the user provides black, for example, it will be printed. But if the user provides purple, that is not there in the inputs, nothing will happen. So if the programmer has already programmed in such a way that the program is supposed to make certain things, to do certain things based on a previously designed set of inputs, then you will ask user by using the switch statement to provide you an input that belongs to that particular set. Now, if the case 1 is true, this statement. If the case 2 is true, then this statement, which is very simple. And we will see in the sample code, and we will see the results displays, and then it will be very clear to you. But before we see the sample code and before we see the results, this is how the pseudocode of the switch statement looks like. You have the switch and then case label 1, case label 2, case label 3 and the case label n, depending upon how many inputs are there in your set. You have a set of inputs. That set may have 10 elements, that set can have 100 elements, or that set can have 1000 elements, not beyond that set. So your program will not accept any input beyond that set. So now we will see the sample code also and the results also, how the results of a, so this is how the switch statements look like. We are taking one input and we have this time we have named it as n, and we are saying enter the value of n, and we are telling the user range of n is 1 to 3. So that means you can only provide 1, 2 and 3. If you provide 4, you will see this message over here, value of n is out of range. If you provide 0, you will again see this message. If you provide 1, then this set of input between this case 1 and break will be executed. Over here in this example, I have only taken example of one printf statement, but within this case 1 and break, case 1 statement and break statement, you can have 1000 statements, 1000 commands, 1000 decisions, 1000 ifs, 1000 loops, anything which you want. So within this case 1, you can have as many statements as you like. Over here there is only one statement which will print value of n is 1. Again, it is very simple, but these are the building blocks of programming. So if the case is 2, then you will have this message printed. If the case is 3, then you will have this message printed. And as I explained a little while ago, if the user provides any value that is not between 1 and 3, then this default message will be printed, which will say value of n is out of range. So this is how the results of switch statement looks like. So if I run the program, the computer will display this message: enter the value of n, range of n is 1 to 3, the user provided 2, and the display message is value of n is 2. So this is very simple result, and this is based on the switch statement. Now loop control statements and see. There are so many occasions when the programmer wants to repeat a certain command for say 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 50 times, or maybe 100 times. For example, if you are making a picture out of pixels, and you know the display of any computer is made of pixels, so there are maybe 1 million pixels and you want to make a picture. So if we start printing, or if we start coloring those pixels one by one, it is going to take an eternity. So using loops, we can use the loop statements to color those pixels, or color those blocks, or color those parts of pictures in a quickest possible way. So we will see how we use the loops in C programming language. The first and very famous loop is for loop. For loop is also known as pre-test loop. So the statements under for loop are executed until the one condition is true. So for example, if you want to print say between all the integers between 1 and 100, you can have this loop, for loop. So this is the actually condition. This is how the loop actually executes. This is where you take the decision. If it is true, then the body of loop can contain one statement, body of loop can contain 10 statements or 100 statements or as many statements as you like. And if the statements and if this condition is not true, then the statement n will be executed. So from here, from this pseudocode, it may not be very clear, but from the sample code and from the results, it will be very clear to you how a for loop is actually implemented in C language. So this is how it is actually implemented. It says there is an integer, we have declared one integer and we have named it as number. So from here this for loop starts and it says for number is equal to 1 to number is less than or equal to 50, number plus plus means number is equal to number plus 1. So this is a plus plus operator. This is a plus operator and this is a unary operator which is operating only on one operand. This number is operand, this is an operator. So it says the print the number of values from here to from 1 to 50. Maybe in the sample, maybe in the results you will see only 15 or 10 numbers depending upon how it was actually programmed, but this is the concept of how you actually program a for loop. So we will see how the results of the for loop actually look like. So I actually modified this to print numbers from 1 to 15 instead of 1 to 50 because then it will go beyond this screen and I will have to scroll down and make two screenshots. So I reduce it to 15. So I reduce this 50 to 15 and it is actually printing the integers from 1 to 15. Again, it may not seem very difficult, it may not seem very complex thing, but these are the blocks, the building blocks from where you make the complex programs in C. So this is how you actually make a for loop. You say for this number from 1 to this or from 10 to 20 or from 100 to 1 million, do this and it will do this. It will continue doing this until this condition is true. This is known as the conditional loop or for loop. Now we will see other loops also. There are two other types of loops in C programming language. The other is the for loop, a while loop, while loop. A while loop, also known as the entry loop. In while loop, the condition is tested first, then the statements under the body of the while loop will be executed. So this is the body of the loop. If we see the flow chart, this is the body of the loop. If we test the condition, if it is true, it will make another iteration, another circle or another running of the statement is known in programming as iteration. So you make this, and also numerical analysis also you use this word iteration. So if the condition is true, it will make another iteration. If the condition is not true, then it will exit from the loop. So this is the pseudocode of the while loop. So when you start the loop, you mention the condition and then it will continue doing the process or action iterations which you have mentioned between these two brackets and until and unless this condition is met. When the condition is met, it will exit from the loop. So this is how it looks like when you develop a program using the while loop. Again, over here you can see this unary operator a plus plus, and over here this particular statement will display a message which will say demonstrating while loop, very simple, and then it will say okay, enter the value of a. So if the value of a is less than or equal to 20, it will print the number itself over here. Okay, and if it is not true, then it will exit from the loop. We will see how it is actually implemented. The only thing which you can take from this slide is that you have started the loop and you have specified the condition over here, that if this condition is true, then you make another iteration. Then it will print the A and then again see if the value, if the condition is set or not, if the condition is met or not. If the condition is met, it will make another iteration, and so on and so forth. And now we'll see the results of this while loop. Enter the value of first. It says demonstrating the while loop, that is coming from the first printf statement. Then it is asking for an input. Enter the value of A. The user provided 10, so it will start with 10 and then make all the iterations until unless it reaches 20, because it says, the previous slide says while it is equal to, while A is less than or equal to 20. So this is from where it is coming. So this is how it is coming. So the next and the last loop statement in C is do while loop. Do while loop is also known as exit loop. In the do while loop, the statements will be executed first and then the condition is checked. In the previous one, the condition was specified over here. So if the condition is not true, it will not even enter the loop. But over here, it will enter the loop in any condition and then make first iteration, and then the condition is checked. If the condition is true, it will make another iteration, and then at the end of the loop it will make another check. If the condition is true, then the second iteration, third iteration, fourth iteration are done, and if the condition is not true, then it will exit from the loop. In many conditions in programming, you have to make these types of loops, do while loops and the while loops. Now where to use the while loop and where to use do while loop, you will only come to know when you actually program yourself. It is actually the matter of it is actually at the discretion of the programmer what type of loop the programmer want to implement to meet a certain condition. Whether a for loop will be the most suitable loop to make this condition, or a while loop will be the best implementation, or the do while loop will be the best implementation. It only comes with the experience, or if the condition already says that you have to use the while loop or the for loop or the do while loop. Otherwise you will come to know with the passage of time. So this is how the do while loop actually looks. So in today's lecture we saw the loops and conditional statements. Now I have again showed this as the sample code for the do while loop. This is how you actually program the do while loop. The condition is over here. In the previous we specified the condition over here, but now you are specifying condition over here, so at least one iteration will be there. So result of a do while will be something like this. It will start from 0 and then it will go up to 10, and the condition is met, and then it will exit from the loop. So in today's lecture we saw the control statements in C, the looping statements, decision making statements, simple if statements, else if statements, else if ladder, nested if statements, and then in the switch statement also we had one example of switch statements, and also we saw three types of loops in today's lecture. Those loops were for loop, while loop, and do while loop. So thank you very much, and thank you for attending this lecture.